Okay, welcome back. We're going to back to Una over some.
Fanfiction unleash your imagination.
I knew this. Why did not expect this? Okay, we might have some of this reread because I had to update this. Okay, I had to update my computer. So there might be some accidentally some things, okay? Sorry for this, but you guys are gonna have to suffer through this with me. Also, we're almost done with the thing. Because there's only 60 chapters. I wish there was more, but you know, I'm quite now.
The heroics lesson continued with a detailed look into Friday's matches, though for certain members of the class there wasn't much Aizawa could say that they hadn't already covered during the weekend between a day's training and dinner. The class passed quickly, and the school day was over. With Todoroki still missing, Izuku left the classroom with Hitachi, Tinya, Eijiro, and Tokoyami. Time for some real training, Eijiro declared, cheerfully stretching his arms above his head. Any special plans? Some, Izuku responded. For you, we can pound your quirk to be stronger elsewhere. I don't want to anger Aizawa by blowing up the sports field, again, so I want you to keep improving your agility in combination with controlling your quirk. It served you well on Friday. Actually. Izuku stopped in the corridor and turned back towards the classroom door. Shoji. He called. Would you like to train with us? The group around him seemed surprised, but their expressions quickly shifted into happy smiles, especially Hitachi and Tinya. One of Shoji's tentacle arms stretched out of the door to join them. It formed a mouth. I would be happy to. I have heard many good things about your training. The mouth turned towards Eijiro. It is difficult not to. Eijiro held the back of his head. Heh, sorry. During the conversation, Shoji had walked up to them, shrinking his arm into its normal, yet still impressive length. Is there anything specific you want me for? Sounded like it has something to do with Kirishima. I'd like you to join for you, Izuku stuttered, but
Okay, so good news. I know we got some of this part is already done for us. If we did. I should get my phone out for that shit though. I haven't worked today. I could have record earlier. Damn it. Dude. Phone. Uh-huh. Oh god, my quality is bad. I need a higher picture quality. I'm looking through. There it is, it's very warm.
Just keep being yourself. That is more than enough. Also, remember what you made me agree to on Saturday after we came back from the beach. After the beach. Eijiro muttered. You mean that talk? But that was you. Oh, right, I remember. Sure, anytime. Good. It was hard to resist hitting that gorilla. Eijiro seemed confused. All Might, Hitachi clarified. Oh, well I guess I'll be your All Might then. He really said that with a straight face and smile. Izuku huffed. So you really want to test the limits of your quirk? Yeah, of course. Izuku kept staring at him intensely for a long time, but even with the recent memory of All Might's face he couldn't keep going, which itself was further confirmation of his previous words. His lips twitched and he turned his face down a second before a chuckle got out. He reached over Eijiro's shoulders, leaning on him a bit as he pushed them into motion. Then let's go. I'll give you the worst beating you've had since Friday, I guess. Heh, I see what you did there, but don't expect me to make it easy. I would expect nothing less. Do you worst. All Might. Did. Tinya started. Izuku just say All Might's name while smiling. Hitachi finished. The darkness is missing, or perhaps merely hiding. If it's the latter, I'm glad Eijiro is the one taking the hit, Hitachi shuddered. Izuku didn't need to see them to sense them nodding as they left the room. He stopped as one large form entered the edge of his vision and turned to face Shoji. Shoji raised one hand in greeting and it formed a mouth. Hi. So, Izuku began. You were spying on me. Well, technically yes. Nothing technical about it. Izuku, Hitachi complained, he only did what I asked him. Meeting All Might is never easy on you, let alone doing it without anyone there to support you. I thought it was better to keep up with what was going on. Izuku still stared at Shoji. Eijiro raised his arm over Izuku's shoulder like Izuku often did. Eventually Izuku relaxed enough that his shoulders dropped a bit under the arm. Toshi, shouldn't you already be training with Eraserhead? You really want to keep him waiting? The corridor was completely silent for several seconds. See you later, Hitachi said, followed by running steps. Izuku had never turned away from Shoji. As for you, Izuku said, I hope you won't mind training with Tinya and Tokoyami before getting a shot at Eijiro. Shoji's face was covered, making reading his expressions difficult, but his eyes opened in surprise. You aren't angry? I am annoyed, Izuku responded in a cold tone. But I have to talk about that with Toshi. He is probably right, but don't tell him I said that. I can do that. Also, Izuku's stare softened. Sorry that you got left behind in the corridor. Toshi did it because of me. I have issues. It was better to only have specific people around. I could see that, or at least hear. I hope things are better now. Yes, Izuku glanced around at the group surrounding him. Still coming to train with us? Of course. They headed to the dressing rooms and then out to the sports field in their hero costumes. Hitachi and Aizawa were already at it on the other side of the field. Shoji's arms stretched and split into more arms. Tinya and Tokoyami would get some good agility and dodging training with him. Meanwhile Izuku formed his dragon fists and started letting out steam. He didn't want anyone present to be hurt, but as long as Eijiro's quirk held it was very satisfying to keep punching him without a care in the world, even more so when Izuku imagined All Might's face on him. Eijiro didn't fight as well as before though, not as aggressively. It made hitting him easier. Izuku would have thanked him for the opportunity to let out his frustrations, but he didn't want to reward not fighting properly. "Excuse me," a voice came from next to them. Izuku stopped, his fist still against Eijiro's chin that it had smashed into. Without moving from that position, both of them turned their heads to look next to them and down where their short principal stood. Eijiro pulled his already smoking chin away from Izuku and turned towards Nizu, undoing his quirk. "Mr. Principal, good afternoon." "Good afternoon to you, Kirishima." Of course Nizu had already memorized their names, or he had had a recent conversation with All Might. Izuku raised his eyes, noticing Todoroki some distance to the side from the principal. His expression didn't seem as cold as usual, but more hesitant and uncertain. Izuku turned and stepped past Nizu to go to him. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay. They aren't trying to return me to Endeavor right now at least." "Well, that is the least they can do. Don't worry, things are going to get better." "I hope so." Todoroki brushed his forehead. "There are so many things to consider." "I believe that. Do you want to join our training? It might be a good distraction from everything else." "I'd love to, but..." "Ahem," Nizu interrupted, finally earning Izuku's attention. Izuku moved a bit to be partially between him and Todoroki. "While I appreciate seeing such concern between fellow students, I am afraid Todoroki won't have time to join you today as he will have a meeting with his siblings to determine what happens next, including his living situation." Izuku thought about the words for a moment and tilted his head to look at Todoroki. "Is that what you want to do?" Todoroki kept looking down, not meeting Izuku's gaze, but he nodded. "They aren't the problem like Endeavor is. I'm the one who hasn't been fair to them, and I need them to help Mom, I think. I might be going to live with my sister, or maybe my brother. She tries to be nice even to Endeavor. He doesn't. Are you okay staying with them?" "Yeah, it's not the same as long as she doesn't try to make us pretend things are okay with Endeavor, it is okay, I hope. We are looking into getting a court order against him. Also, I don't want to be trouble to you any longer, even though..." Izuku stepped closer despite feeling the air cool. "That is one thing you don't need to worry about." He reached to grab Todoroki's right arm and the coldness disappeared. "You know the address if you need to stay somewhere. You can have mine too," Eijiro declared, approaching from behind Izuku. "If you need someone to train with or talk to," Izuku added. "Yeah. That too." Todoroki's lips turned into a slight smile and just so happened to do so as soon as Eijiro arrived by Izuku's side. "Thank you. I think I'm going to need that, but seems I won't be bothering you tonight at least." "Never have," Izuku responded. "Mr. Izawa has kept me informed on the arrangements you have had after the sports festival," Nizu said. "I thought you should at least be informed on how things are progressing. Also, young Todoroki refused to leave without getting to talk with you, especially you two. That said, I would appreciate if you could limit your involvement in the Endeavor situation, especially the publicity and legal side." "No, only Todoroki has a say in that," Izuku scowled. Nizu shook his head, clearly unsurprised by the response. "There is one more thing. I got a call from concerned parents of a student who had decided to sell her quirk, and apparently you already had an agreement." "Yes, that happened. We haven't signed a contract or transferred the quirk yet though." "Let me guess, her parents forbade it?" Nizu shook his head. "I got the impression they intended to, but seems their daughter has some say in the matter." "Of course I do. It is my quirk," a familiar girl declared, approaching them. "I thought you were avoiding me when you left the class without looking for me. Had to send one of my babies to look for you." She pointed at a drone hovering over them. So did you get all of the law stuff ready? She asked. Yes, Izuku responded. I can send you the contract digitally, but your parents have to sign it as well. Izuku glanced down at Nizu to evaluate his reaction. This is not a matter I or the school can interfere with, but I must insist you to not seek quirks in school from other students or staff. We cannot do anything if someone approaches you at their own initiative and enters a contract outside the school, but such actions taking place within the school put us in a difficult position in terms of publicity and... Nizu shivered. The parents. Izuku rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll try not to market my offer at school, but you know as well as I do that people are still trying to use the school to attack me. Unfortunately so, yes, but we aren't in the habit of interfering with students' affairs simply because someone took offense on them outside of school, so long as no crimes or objectively villainous behavior happens. Since when do you people care about that? Nizu frowned, or at least he seemed to. With animal faces there was always some room for interpretation. They fell into a staring contest for a moment. Hey, I'm sure they've learned from the whole thing with Bakugo, Eijiro declared. Izuku made the mistake of looking at him and couldn't stay as angry as he wanted to be. He couldn't even correct the misunderstanding that he was only talking about the school. I doubt that, he retorted, missing the previous venom in his voice. He faced Nizu again. Know this, I only agree to not asking to take quirks from students permanently. That doesn't mean I won't discuss giving students new quirks. Just because people always forget that side of my ability doesn't mean I won't use it. Yes, the school won't oppose that as long as the quirks are acquired legally from someone giving them up freely and proper care is taken to ensure the quirks don't harm the recipient. From what I have heard you have already done so. He turned towards the others who had stopped training to listen in. More than once it seems. Tinya scratched his new engine exhaust. Nizu focused on Izuku again. Well, I believe we are in at an understanding regarding transference of quirks. As for young Todoroki, you should at least believe we take the security of our students seriously. To that end, we should go now. Izuku had a response to that ready, but Eijiro bumped on his shoulder as he turned to say goodbye to his classmate. Izuku chose not to interrupt that. He was concerned to see Todoroki leave, even though everything should have been okay. At least he would be free in the evening for different activities. Favorite, story author follow, story author.
Yeah, that's gonna be a little bit bitchy to me, because I'm not liking the story of it. Okay, I do like it, but I don't like it at the same time. That's what it is with me right now. I want to change stories, but I need to finish this one. I will watch you later. I went on that one, but I already watched a bunch of the fucking previous things for this one. I already know about it. Can't wait for you guys to do that. No, I'm not signing up. Is this the one? Oh, wait, no. Fuck no. No, I don't want to log into Lawpad. We have a bunch of chapters here. Look at all these chapters that we have. But I remember there is something I will have to address right here. The first part is basically what it is. Now let's go to the second chapter, right? See, Waiting for Hope. Oh, but I don't think I have to worry about that much as much as I wanted to. So this might be not as essential as I want you guys to do. So I don't play it by me because remember this one is gonna be written by someone else. I don't want to write my own. I want to, but I can't. I do have an idea for a one shot though, so don't worry about that though.
Fanfiction, unleash your imagination.
Let's finish this series though, and I can do my own. Make a one shot. Let's continue this, and then I want to really just go to a different story and do one shot probably.
Izuku made sure his helmet was properly on before Shirakuro stepped into the dark mist of a warp gate. Tomura had taken to bringing in more people at the bar, trying to recruit them. It was a wonder the police or heroes hadn't already caught on to where he was despite USJ making sure they were looking. Merely going to the place felt like a risk, but Izuku felt he needed to keep an eye on his adoptive brother and the people he sought to recruit. At least it gave him a breather between training sessions. As he stepped out of Kurogiri's warp gate, he encountered yet another new, but this time distantly familiar, face. Jiren, he was the man Shirakuro had done business with for his father, one of his first missions. The man had his back to Tomura, who appeared to have destroyed another bar stool, and was walking towards the door as Shirakuro appeared in his way. Ah, Jiren said, smiling. Finally, some civilized company. Tomura's hand inched towards another stool until a strand of dark mist slapped his fingers. Kurogiri standing behind the bar counter poured him a drink. Shirakuro took a nearby stool, never turning away from the visitor. It has been a while, Shirakuro said. Did Tomura seek to recruit you, or ask your help to find people? The latter. Tying myself to a single customer would be bad for business. So, you are keeping busy. I've had worse times. From what I've heard, you haven't been sitting idle either. Caused quite the stir at the hospital. Have to say it was impressive. Most people won't get away from All Might, let alone after he already got a hold of you. Shirakuro had to focus to not have a reaction his mask couldn't hide at the mention of the so-called hero. He tilted his head towards Kurogiri. I had good help. Still valuing those working for you. Are you perhaps also seeking help? People are getting curious about the masked man who outplayed All Might. Some parts of the underworld talk more about you than Stain. I can think of some powerful people who would not last an hour with Shigaraki, but might be interested if your interests happen to align profitably. In a way, Shirakuro was glad he had been successful in working for his father, but couldn't help but wonder what most of the people he cared about would think about that. It had been less than an hour since he last saw them after finishing evening training, but it all seemed so distant. As much as he loved the fake life of Izuku Midoriya, it was still only pretending. The truth came up as soon as the sun went down at the latest. Shirakuro looked at Jiren to politely refuse the offer, at least for now. Get out, Tomura seated as Kurogiri yanked a stool away from the reach of his hand. Jiren waved his hand to Shirakuro as he walked to the door. Let's talk some other time. He left, leaving Shirakuro with a seething Tomura to deal with. Even after dealing with Tomura for more than a year, Shirakuro could never really feel relaxed near him, even less so when his adoptive big brother was angry. Shirakuro measured the distance between them with his eyes to make sure there were at least a few arms reaches between them. What's wrong? He asked, trying to sound as calm as possible without coming off as arrogant or condescending in any way. Though you could never be sure how Tomura would take things. Stain, Everyone talks about Stain and not the league. The only ones that have wanted to join are some scums no better than those who already showed how useless they were at the USJ. What do people see in him that I don't have, that they want to follow him instead? Shirakuro thought about answering, but he hadn't had enough time to study the killer and he didn't want to poke the walking death seething across the room. Tomura started scratching his neck with both hands and a shiver went through Shirakuro's spine. If they want to follow him, one could hear gears turning in Tomura's head, then he should join the league and bring his followers. Shirakuro resisted the urge to ask, why would Stain work with Tomura considering he seemed to work alone? Even his followers didn't care to work with each other. As it seemed like there wasn't major development with rebuilding the league, Shirakuro decided his time would be better spent training. Tomura wasn't the best conversation partner at the best of times, let alone in his current state. He raised his hand to call for Kurogiri and the Nomu arrived in a few seconds. Thank why? Shirakuro started. Kurogiri. Tomura called. Go find Stain for me. The Nomu pulled a bottle of mineral water and soda from under the counter. Do not forget proper hydration. Which do you prefer today, young Shigaraki? The water, Shirakuro responded and got the bottle from Kurogiri. Kurogiri. Tomura shouted. Get over here before I'll turn you to dust. A switch flipped in Shirakuro. The bottle was left on the counter as he got up, holding his hand up to keep Kurogiri behind him. His nails grew longer, poking out of small holes on his gloves with venom shining in their tips. What did you say? He seethed in a cold voice that made even Tomura have a pause, only a pause though. Tomura started scratching himself even harder than before. Stay out of my way. The league is mine and I won't let you interfere. I couldn't care less about your league, but you will not lay your hands on Kuro. Tomura tsked, disgusted. The face of an explosive blonde flashed over him in Shirakuro's eyes. Drops of venom fell off his shaking fingers. Still acting like a Nomu is a friend. Seems to be all you can think of. Here I am trying to bring down this rotten system while you are playing around with the people that are being pushed to the top of that system, or perhaps you would rather join them and betray Sensei. Tomura was lucky he couldn't see Shirakuro's. Izuku's death stare. Whose side are you on anyway? Now it was is. Shirakuro's turn to have a pause. Tomura, now just Tomura, stepped closer. Shirakuro moved to keep himself between his brother and Kurogiri. Right now I am on Kuro's side. If that is against you, that depends on you. You brat. Children, their father's voice came from a speaker. Tomura, don't threaten my most valuable Nomu, and Izuku, have we talked about anger management? The mocking tone made Shirakuro grit his teeth, but at least Tomura would not cause trouble with their father present, even if it was only through a screen. Now, let's talk about something that appears of interest to everyone present, the hero killer Stain. Somehow that killer has everyone convinced he is some kind of big deal or someone to follow. And what are you going to about that? If he joins the league, I can use his name to make the idiots that follow him join us, but first I need to find him and this brat. He waved his hand towards Shirakuro, started getting in the way. Father remained silent behind the black screen, and had no eyes to begin with, but Shirakuro could still feel his stare. It carried a wordless question. He threatened Kurogiri, Shirakuro stated like listing a historical fact. Still so feral, his father said similarly. It isn't necessarily a bad thing if it doesn't cloud your judgment, but... Shirakuro kept staring at the screen, Kurogiri by his side behind the counter. Perhaps there is a way to practice that. Shirakuro, you were also interested in Stain. Perhaps you would like to have a chat with him. He should stay away from this, Tomura complained. League is mine, you said. Yes, the league is yours. While his voice was as calm as ever, there was a notable tiredness in the statement. Stain is not part of the league, at least not yet, and you do not know where he is. Let Shirakuro do the searching. It plays to his strengths. Best case, he brings you a new valuable recruit. Worst case, were Shirakuro to let other motivations cloud his judgment, Stain won't be distracting other potential recruits anymore. Shirakuro could think of worst case scenarios. This guy killed professional heroes on the regular. If someone could find a way around the regeneration, it would be someone like him, but his father's intent did not pass Shirakuro. He was still not sure how to feel about Stain. He hadn't had much time to research the man, with more important people around him for the past few days, but some of the heroes he had killed had come up before as Shirakuro, or Izuku, researched the shadows of Hero Society to better know what he was fighting. Ingenium was a questionable case, others, maybe not. Still, killing them in the shadows had done nothing but turn them into martyrs. Nothing had been exposed about the dead heroes by Stain's rampage, except maybe their incompetence in failing to stop him. He still wasn't convinced Stain would ever be interested in the League, or Tomura. So, son, you think you are up to the task? Shirakuro blinked under his helmet. It was really a blessing. It's not easy. He keeps on the move. But his father led him on. His victims don't seem to be completely random, Shirakuro continued, at least most of them, and there is usually more than one case in one area before he moves elsewhere. He last appeared in Hosu, and his victim doesn't appear to fit the profile. He hesitated for a moment, trying to separate his feelings and facts. There are other heroes he is after in that region. Identifying them means finding Stain, maybe. See, both of you, it is not that difficult when you know what you want and think calmly about solutions. Just don't forget to also consider several steps ahead. Go ahead and take Kurogiri with you, but do try to not steal all my nomas this time. Yes, master, Kurogiri said mechanically. Good. Tomura, if you intend to take advantage of Stain to recruit people, you must convince his followers the League serves their interests. If they follow someone who kills heroes, they will follow me once they see past Stain. You need more than that, Shirakuro muttered. Shut up. Finding him is the only thing you need to worry about. As if he could ever worry only about only one thing. That would make his life so much easier. At least he was smart enough to not add to that by starting another argument with an already irritated Tomura. I'll keep my training short and start researching. He got up, ready to go, but stopped to take one more look at the irritated Tomura, then glanced at Kurogiri. Kuro, come with me. If Tomura thinks he can decay you, then clearly he does not need you to stay here. Shirakuro fell quiet, realizing he had given a direct command. Unless you have something else you need to get done. No, young Shigaraki. Laundry will take another hour to complete. That is mostly Tomura's. He can take care of it himself. Yes, young Shigaraki. Anything else, Dad? Shirakuro asked. If he didn't want to increase things he needed to worry about from Tomura, then the same certainly applied to their father, if for different reasons. I'd like to hear what you are planning for the number 2 hero, but we can discuss that later. Considering how enthusiastic you are about that little side project, I am expecting something spectacular. Shirakuro nodded and stepped into a warp gate that handily appeared by him. He had to change clothes to not stain them with blood while training with the large Nomua. He only reset his limbs a couple of times before finishing and sat down in a nearby room with a laptop to make a list of heroes active in the Hosu region, sinking himself into the task as soon as Kurogiri fetched an empty notebook to be dedicated for this project. He had quite an impressive list to start weeding down by the time the yawning started getting disruptive. Perhaps you should return home and rest, young Shigaraki, Kurogiri offered. Izuku stopped writing and considered it for a moment. No, it's not yet that late, but it is getting harder to stare at the screen. He fell quiet for a moment longer. Maybe we should take a look at the place. See if we can find anyone on the list. Can you get us to Hosu? Yes, I have coordinates there. Will you go as Shirakuro or Izuku? Izuku had a pause, then reached for Shirakuro's helmet. Shirakuro, I cannot move as freely, but Izuku has no excuse to be in Hosu, especially at this time. Be ready to pull us out quickly if there is any trouble. They stepped through a warp gate to a rooftop of a building in a densely built area. The sun had gone down a good while ago and even the twilight was long gone. Shirakuro moved to the edge to look down towards the street. Everything seemed calm, people still going through their evenings on well-lit streets without much worry. He opened a slit in his helmet to see without anything in the way and focused. Suddenly he could distinguish every detail on the face of a woman talking on a phone by a bus stop far below and down the street. If he was better at reading from lips, he could have known everything she said. Yes, he could make this quirk work. Maybe he should have paid Hatsum more. He yawned, losing his focus on the woman. Every little twitch and eye movement threw him off from whatever he was looking at when zoomed in this far, and it wasn't even the most he could do. It was getting dizzying. Even with so relatively simple a quirk he still had plenty to learn. He moved to the other edge of the roof to look at the alley behind the building. It was dark, but relying on his helmet's night vision instead of a quirk revealed two people sitting against a wall, apparently eating something. Looking at their sizes and head shapes, at least one of them had a mutant-type quirk, pretty significant at that. He wasn't surprised about someone in their situation having one, unfortunately. There was a rapid movement on the other end of the alley. Someone ran into it, carrying a bag of some sort. It didn't take long to recognize someone running away. Shirakuro made that connection just before another person entered the alley well behind the first one, and this one had a cape and some kind of headgear. He was shouting something ineligible from the rooftop. They quickly approached Shirakuro's building and the two people in the alley. The escaping man moved quickly, bouncing between walls of the alley, some kind of quirk for the legs. The chasing hero was fit and fast compared to an average person, but nothing special for a hero, and fell behind with every step. He could only shout after the thief as if that did something. The thief was now almost upon the two people that were moving and looking around. The larger one with a strange, elongated head bounced up as the thief was almost upon them. The noticeably smaller thief slammed into the large guy and got trapped in a bear hug. Even from far above it was clear he wasn't about to give up without a fight. The large guy jolted backwards more than should have been possible considering the smaller size of his catch, probably a quirk-enhanced kick. The big guy's more normal-sized friend got up and approached, pulling off a glove. Now that the person was on the move, it appeared to be a she. The woman slapped the thief with an open palm. In a few seconds the thief stopped struggling just as the hero reached them. He basically pulled the thief from the bigger man's hold so soon there would not have been enough time to exchange many words. The hero worked a few seconds to get the unconscious thief over his shoulder, but after that his gestures turned more aggressive as he seemed to talk to the helpful duo. The woman stepped closer, pointing at the hero and shouting something. Suddenly he pushed her with his free hand. She stumbled back and was saved from falling by her large partner catching her. They were on the brink of a fight, and while Shirakuro wasn't dismissing the duo's ability to defend themselves, they would just get labeled as villains if they did so. It was no different than if the police tried to violently arrest you without a reason and you defended yourself in kind. Good luck defending your right to self-defense in court with zero evidence or witnesses. Shirakuro's hand twitched. Dark mist floated across the air to touch it and the motion eased somewhat. By then more people had arrived in the alley, including a police officer. The hero backed away from the duo, waving his hands at the thief. One of the police stepped past him, approaching the duo, most likely talking to them. The woman shouted back. Things seemed to be escalating again until the police turned to the hero, then left with him. By then the police were carrying the thief. One of them turned briefly towards the helpful duo as they left. The duo then stepped back, and the man picked up something from the ground. He brought it to his mouth. Shirakuro grimaced. "Kuro," he said, "drop me down there and go get some food. Drop some money in with it." "Are you sure, young?" "Yes," Shirakuro said. "Don't worry. I'm also collecting information, not risking it just to hand out food." "I understand," Kurojiri responded and waved his hand, opening a warp gate next to Shirakuro. "Thank you." Shirakuro stepped out of the warp gate a little way down the alley from the duo. Far enough to be covered by the darkness of the alley so that he couldn't be seen without the use of night vision, but close enough to hear what they were saying. The woman was talking. "I know. That doesn't make him any less of a dirtbag. How can you be so calm after he called you that?" "Experience." The simple answer, no more than a sigh, was enough to silence the woman. It gave Shirakuro pause too. He could imagine old Izuku saying that word in the exact same tone after letting some bully do whatever they felt like, and wouldn't be surprised to hear the same from some of the people around Izuku. The large man continued. "Trying to respond only makes things worse," he said. "It is easier to get away staying quiet in general, let alone when it is a hero. You are lucky he didn't get us arrested for quirk use. That's just because he didn't want us telling what really happened, as if anyone would believe us." "I believe you," Shirakuro said. The duo jumped and turned towards him. The large man seemed to tower over him even from some distance away and stared into the darkness with his lizard-like head reminiscent of dinosaurs, and his skin didn't appear ordinary either. The woman looked more ordinary except for some shapes in her skin, some special coloring that wasn't very distinguishable in the darkness. The man stepped between her and Shirakuro. "Who are you?" "Someone who was watching," Shirakuro responded. "Who was that hero?" "Why do you want to know?" the man asked slowly. "I came here to research local heroes and how they really are. Didn't expect to discover something so quickly." "Hold on," the woman said much louder, "you want to know what local heroes are really like? Are you Stain?" "St, you aren't serious," the man gasped. Shirakuro too got taken back, but managed to keep quiet past the initial surprise. "They say he is somewhere in this area," the woman whispered. "Did you hear about Ingenium?" "Of course," the man said, now staring towards Shirakuro, standing even more protectively and perhaps angry. "Encountered him once. Might be the only hero worth the title here." "I am not Stain," Shirakuro finally corrected. "Though I'd like to meet him." The large man lowered his arm a bit, but remained wary. "Why?" "Because of what just happened. Heroes aren't nearly the pure protectors people want to think they are, and the system is even more rotten. Stain seems to understand this at least in some manner. His response is brutal and simplistic, but I still want to know how exactly he views the world, why he does what he does." "Who are you?" The woman repeats the question, now speaking more quietly and carefully. "You don't need to know that. Actually, it is best you don't." The man backed away a few steps, pushing his companion along behind him. "Even if you aren't Stain, you don't sound like a hero, so are you a villain?" Shirakuro stared at him for a moment. "Seems you two can't quite see through the lies of the system that keeps you down if you think things are that simple." Neither of them responded. "If we talk legally, yes, I would be a villain, but that is because I refuse how things work and want to change what others don't want to be changed. I am not here to harass or rob you." As Shirakuro spoke, he gestured with his open empty hands, trying to act as calming as possible while in a full black costume with a black helmet in a dark alley. His best efforts were ruined as the duo suddenly looked behind him and jolted back. "Kuro?" Shirakuro asked. "Yes," a comfortingly familiar voice said and raised a full plastic bag next to Shirakuro, who took it, never turning away from the duo. "We aren't here to cause trouble. I just wanted to know who that hero was, and if you know anything else about heroes like him around here, or about Stain. If you can answer my questions and forget we ever met, we'll give you this bag of food and money. Seems you could use it. I don't know. The man muttered. I think we should do it, the woman urged. The man turned to look at her. Shirakuro could not see how, but he could guess. Don't look at me like that, the woman said. We can't afford to refuse an offer like that. The man continued to stare until the woman sighed. Yes, I remember what we agreed to, but this doesn't feel like that. I mean, he doesn't. Don't tell me you disagree with what he said. I really feel it is okay to tell him. It's not like we have any big secrets. At least we could have full stomachs. Now it was the man's turn to sigh in a strange, slightly inhuman high pitch. He nodded. Okay. I have my doubts, but I feel the same. He glanced at Shirakuro. I think we can trust his word. Shirakuro wanted to say they shouldn't, but he was already used to constantly silencing and squashing that internal voice that kept screaming in the back corner of his head. At least in this. The man turned back towards Shirakuro. We accept your offer. That hero just now was native. He's a local hero. I don't think he is well known nationally. Pretty average hero as far as I can evaluate, but a lot of people on the streets have warned us to avoid him. It is easier to accuse people in trouble for something and collect rewards for arrest than try to find real big-time criminals. If he can find mutants, even better from what I hear. Just now he threatened to arrest us for illegal use of our quirks, as if I could choose to not use mine. But I sent him packing, the woman declared. He didn't want us around trying to tell people what really happened. And what was I doing then? The man shook his head. We should move away from here in case he comes back, the man added. I'll watch your back when you do, Shirakuro offered before even thinking. The duo looked, then bowed at the same time. Thank you, they said. Shadow-sama, the woman continued. Shadow-sama? Shirakuro asked. Well, you didn't tell us your name. I have to call you something. Sorry about her, the man said. It is okay. About the other heroes around here. Sometime later Shirakuro watched from the roof with Kurogiri as the duo left, the woman holding the plastic back against her chest like a national treasure. How much did you put in there? Enough to feed 2 average people for 3 to 4 days, though considering his size they might not last that long. How about money? Only 100,000 yen, at first. At first. They had useful information and it seemed you would want to give them more, so I added 400 more. Good. Shirakuro looked back at the alley they had met in. A new form had just entered it. Native had come back. They had left just in time, or perhaps a little too early. For a brief moment Shirakuro could understand Stain a little better as his fingers twitched. After Native looked around, moving like he was frustrated, he left. Shirakuro turned his back to the hero and ran forward to leap on the next roof, making sure to keep an eye on the duo. He followed them for several blocks, using Kurogiri's warp gates to cross the wide street when they did. He could have crossed it with his jets, but those belonged to Izuku Midoriya. Shirakuro could not be seen using them or anything like them for that matter, and with that distance he might have needed regeneration afterwards. A while later he watched them settle behind a store hidden by its dumpsters, the sight only making Shirakuro more frustrated. Young Shigaraki. I believe they are sufficiently far to be secure. Maybe, but... Shirakuro paused as there was a warning sound in his helmet. Check the house. Kurogiri disappeared momentarily in a spiral of mist, then reappeared from another. Your classmate Todoroki just arrived at the house. He's already at the door. Shit, Shirakuro said. He took one last glance down at the duo behind the store. They seemed to be fine. He looked at his own black gloves and sleeves. He had to change, but if Todoroki was already at the door and something was clearly wrong. Would Todoroki? He was hit by a front of mist. Take those away quickly. I'll be. He jumped into the pool, making sure to submerge entirely, getting himself soaked. By the time his head re-emerged on the surface, all of the clothes were gone with only a strand of dark mist left, and then even that was gone. Izuku pulled himself up from the pool with a single yank and picked a towel from a nearby shelf. He rubbed off worst of the water as he walked and tied the towel around his waist by the time he reached the door. There was no time to wait as the doorbell had been quiet. The walking weather front of a classmate didn't even have time to fully turn back around as Izuku grabbed his arm, pulled him closer, and upon having him close enough, trapped Todoroki by bringing an arm around his back over the backpack, not caring about the frost that developed on his wet arm. They were already inside and the door snapped closed behind them before Todoroki caught onto what was happening. Only then did Izuku realize he might have risked being burned by surprising Todoroki like that, but he hardly cared. Todoroki's whole body was still unnaturally cold even though he wasn't cooling everything around himself anymore. Izuku walked him towards the living room. Sorry I took too long. What went wrong? I thought you were staying with your sister. Izuku whispered, hoping to not add to the tension he was feeling under his arm. Todoroki took a few seconds to breathe before he answered. He wouldn't leave us alone. He tried to contact all of us. We stayed in the hospital as long as we could, but then he tried to get there. Security held him back, but it's just because fighting them would hurt his reputation, but he knows where my sister lives. He's been there before. I couldn't go there, not if we can't keep him away. I needed to go somewhere. Izuku pulled his hand, pressing Todoroki closer. The switch was shaking, begging to be flipped. SHH. You did right, Shoto. Shoto shook under Izuku's arm, but at least his skin was starting to feel like normal body temperature. Izuku sat him on the sofa. Better? Izuku asked. Shoto let out a long-held sigh of relief and nodded. Yes, sorry. Stop, Izuku interrupted. He didn't need to explain any more as Shoto nodded and didn't continue. So how was the rest of your family? I think they are happy I got away from him. Natsu is still annoyed at some things I said to him in the past. I should have listened to him more. I don't think he's going to stop reminding me about that. Izuku thought about Tamura, and to some extent Hitachi. I don't think he will, Izuku said, trying to include some friendly teasing in his voice. A huff from Shoto sounded like it had worked. I wish everyone else listened to him too. No, Izuku corrected. They should listen to you. How many are going to believe me? Not as many as should. Izuku shook his head, then remembered something. At least you are lucky that you are a hero student with a powerful quirk that people seem to be actually interested in. Imagine if you were some poor person in an alley abused by a famous hero, knowing no one would believe you. Compared to that, it is actually easy for you to do what you need to. Izuku's hand had started to shake a little as he spoke and squeezed Shoto's shoulder harder. Shoto glanced at it. Izuku yanked his hand away. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Now it was Izuku's turn to apologize. You didn't. Eijiro's grip hurt more than that when we trained. The name alone helped Izuku relax. Heh, it sure does, but don't tell him that or he might not train as hard. I don't want to worry him, Shoto agreed. Then he wiped his shoulder with his hand, catching some water. As drops landed on the sofa, Izuku glanced down at himself, still only in his towel and mostly dripping wet. The spot on the sofa he was sitting on had turned a little darker from the moisture. Oh, right. Sorry, you surprised me when I was taking a bath. A knife sunk into Izuku's heart as he lied, and that was one pain regeneration did nothing to ease. I'll go change. We can talk more then. Okay. Izuku got up and walked to the stairs. He stopped to half turn around. Remember, it is safe here. Izuku visited his room, well, adjacent walk-in closet, To dry and get new clothes. The clothes he had been wearing before dressing up as Shirakuro had appeared in the laundry basket and his stain notebook was on his shelf. Most people would not have noticed it, but Izuku's notebook shelf was as well arranged as their contents. Once dry and in pajamas, Izuku headed down again. Despite previously dripping water and still noticing drops on the floor, there were no signs of it on the sofa or Shoto, who was drowsing in the corner of the sofa. His eyes were half closed, looking towards the floor until Izuku got close and they rose to meet him. "I think we should move upstairs."
I'll be right back, okay? Hey guys, I'm back. I said make sure to get something to order to eat, because I'm starving. I had not much of a dinner. Okay, I did. I only had like 3 piss logs. That's not enough though. Okay, it was enough for the time, but now it's like I need more than that.
Izuku said, "Before I have to carry you." "Oh, sure." As they climbed the stairs, Izuku suddenly remembered. "Does your family know where you are?" "They know I'm at your place, like the weekend." They were surprisingly okay with that, with you I mean. "I still didn't tell them where you live." "Good. It's best that way. You should still at least call your sister and let her know you got here safely." Okay." While Shoto sat on a bed to make his call, Izuku went to fetch his own phone from the charger. Like any teen in modern times, he started scrolling through things, namely his new Cellular Quirk email inbox. He had set his expectations low from experience, not expecting too many offers, especially of very powerful or useful quirks, but he was still disappointed at the wave of spam, harassment, and threats that had filled his mailbox, from calling him an organ harvester to threatening his parents. Izuku almost wanted the latter to go through with the threat just to see how that would end. With a new Noma most likely. The whole email service had even been offline from a denial of service attack over the weekend. All Izuku could do was to sort messages based on title, possible offers, illegal threats, and spam to be deleted, and hope he'd get through the offers in a reasonable time. He kept doing it even after Shoto finished his call and they both sat on the edges of their beds. Well, until Shoto moved next to Izuku to look over his shoulder. It took perhaps 10 seconds of him reading the titles of the messages before Izuku felt the chills. "You are using your quirk," Izuku muttered, again. "Sorry," Shoto said and stopped. He looked at Izuku's phone for a few more seconds. "How many of those are you getting?" More than I can get through, though I think there are only a handful of people that are responsible for a good chunk of them, for what that is war. Izuku couldn't finish the word as it was cut off by a large yawn. He had to blink to refocus on the screen. You should go to sleep. Probably, Izuku responded. I don't like to go to sleep. Izuku could feel Shoto's breath on his neck as the other boy looked at him. The nightmares. Yes, Izuku glanced back at Shoto with a soft smile, could be worse though. I'll just need to go wash my teeth. Izuku moved to close the email, when he happened to skim the next message title, Quirk offer, Quirk sleep deprived. More useful than it sounds. Izuku huffed and pointed at the title. Seems even my email is telling me to get some sleep. Seems like it, but why would anyone want a quirk like that? Like what? We don't even know what it does. Right, but, Shoto paused and withdrew away a bit. Sorry, I'm judging people wrong again, right? Just the quirk, you didn't pretend to know anything about the person at least, Izuku assured him, noting there at least hadn't been random changes in temperature. Izuku had a second smaller yawn. Yet, he was now curious and opened the message. Focusing on reading was already difficult, but it got easier with every second that he read the message. I need this. Izuku/Shirakuro has gotten a new quirk and it has been a while since he got/used some of his quirks, so here is a lit to help remember everything. Each quirk has letter P or V next to them. Those with P are public quirks people know Izuku has and Shirakuro cannot be seen using, while V refers to villain quirks which Shirakuro might use but Izuku is not known to, and has no legitimate excuse to, have. All for one, P. Dragon.
Okay, those Dragon Blade is public, Violet is private, and that one is both. Okay, I gotta see how this one actually works out though.
Vibration, V/P. Izuku has integrated using this with his Dragon Blade, improving its cutting power, but people don't.
It's both at the same time, so don't worry.
Realize this, and on its own he only uses it as Shirakuro. Handily touch-based quirk can look to people like it is related to Tomura's quirk. Can cause vibrations from touch which can break locks, break guns, scramble people's insides to knock them out or kill them, and has even stung All Might's wrist. Hellfire Arrow, P. Izuku has integrated using this with his Dragon Blade / its existence with pretending it is part of the Dragon Blade, allowing him to launch fiery shots from his hands. Has improved the flame similar to the Dragon Blade. Regeneration, copy, V.
Regeneration copy V is a villain one. Venomous Nail is hiding from her mind. Public, killing attack as bloodlust is only with him. Zoom is my costume in that one. Should be a. It's gonna be a little bit. We're gonna do that for next episode. We're continuing this. We're gonna finish this shit, okay? If this is not meaning. What the? Am I blind? That's definitely was not. No, it's updated. What the fuck?
Fanfiction, unleash your imagination.
That was updated this year. No, this year. This year, updated very recently. That's something odd. I need to look at that. That means.
Loud beeping penetrated the darkness around Izuku. His eyes opened slowly, prepared to encounter whatever tonight's nightmare would bring, but he only saw the dark sleepover room and Shoto, who had pushed himself up into a half-sitting position on the other bed. The air around them was already cooling. Shoto, temperature, Izuku muttered groggily and reached for his loudly beeping phone. The grogginess disappeared quickly as he saw the symbol for the security system of the house. He got on his feet during the time it took to pull the phone closer. He pulled a security image showing someone on the back porch peeping in through the windows. Izuku gritted his teeth and held the phone so tightly something bent under his fingers. He really did not need this on top of everything else. He could only hope the fool would be a more satisfying punching bag than Ajiro and started stomping towards the door. "What is it?" Shoto asked. "Burglar outside, I hope. Going to handle it?" Izuku made it to the door before rapid steps followed him. In the corridor Izuku walked straight past the stairs, opting for a balcony that opened over the porch. He held his hand up, signaling Shoto to remain quiet as he opened the door just enough to squeeze through the gap and entered the balcony. Now he could hear the person below mumbling, though the words were indistinguishable. Izuku put his phone away and peeked over the railing, waiting for the perfect moment. He bounced, flinging over the railing. It was just one story up, no big deal. He landed right behind the intruder and swept the man's legs out from under him before the man even had time to realize he was there, let alone turn around. The man fell on his back hard enough to crack the planks of the floor. This Kui was much thicker than the paparazzi at the beach, both in shoulder and stomach width. It didn't matter. He was just as easy to take down. Izuku had a knee on his chest and flaming blade over his neck before he finished shouting from the impact. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Izuku seethed. "Please make another and try to fight back." There was a thud as Shoto dropped behind Izuku. It was preceded by a cold chill. "So it was true," the man gasped. "You are holding Todoroki here." Izuku's eyes hardened and the man's widened with fear as they encountered. "Shoto," Izuku gasped a correction as he moved the hotter than before flaming blade closer to the soon-to-be roasted intruder. "Who are you and why are you here?" The man grinned as if he had some power in the situation and wasn't literal centimeters from death. "I am a reporter. Got a tip from a friend about where the Quark Stealer is holding Endeavor's son." Despite Izuku's death stare, the man's eyes glanced at the neighbor's house. His arm flinched. Izuku stomped on it with his free foot. A phone fell out of his grasp, a phone that was recording. It took less than a second to slice it, and some floor planks, in two. The two remaining pieces caught fire. Izuku brought the blade back over the intruder. "I would ask what you think you are doing here, but you already said enough. Not the first Endeavor fan paparazzi who doesn't understand privacy any more than they care what is actually going on. First one to attempt to break into my house though. Look who is talking." "Did?" The dragon blade flashed a little hotter, making the man shut up. "All I want to know is who else knows. My colleagues do, so don't get any ideas. I only came alone to get the scoop first." "Found the Quark Stealer?" Returned Endeavor's son to his father. "He should know already." The temperature dropped quick enough that both of them shivered despite the heat radiating from the dragon blade. Izuku shut off the blade and quickly got up, not caring about the grunts of the man as Izuku's knee pushed against his chest. Todoroki was standing still, staring blankly as the air around him cooled. The windows next to him already had frost creeping up them. Izuku stepped closer despite his skin tingling. "Shoto, stop. I told you he won't get you and I'm not about to break that promise," Izuku said with visible vapor coming out with his breath. "Trust me." The last word stung him more than any ice, but he pushed through it and brought his arms around Shoto, bracing for a painful freeze, but Shoto just flinched and started warming up. It took only a few seconds to stop Izuku from shivering. "Sorry, I'm sorry," Shoto stuttered and slumped in Izuku's hold. "It's okay. I know exactly how you are feeling." There was a moment of silence until it was interrupted by the man behind Izuku scrambling up and running. Izuku could have stopped him before he got on his feet, but was left internally arguing if that was worth letting go already. Shoto flinched. There was a series of clinging noises and then the steps ended with a loud gasp from the man. Izuku pulled out a "help." The man screamed, his legs now encased in ice that would not budge despite his struggles. "You'll get help when the police arrive," Izuku said, his voice colder than Shoto. "I would recommend shutting up until then. My legs are frozen, you are lucky they are all that is. You have no idea." Izuku started guiding Shoto towards the door, but the man did not shut up. "Oh, what was that about? If you stopped worshipping Endeavor and used your brain you would already understand. I already said everything you need to know at the sports festival." Izuku stopped in front of the door, realizing he had not taken keys with him. Begrudgingly, he let go of Shoto. "Hold on a moment," he said and gave the intruder a stare. "Don't do anything stupid. I won't melt you out of there if you do. Might dust off the ash if you get really stupid." He backed away from the wall and pulled up his shirt to expose the jets in his back. He jumped, clearing the balcony railing easily and headed downstairs. Once the back door was opened from the inside, Shoto took a few steps in, but stopped. His breathing was getting faster. "He is coming. Maybe. We need to leave. Go change." "Where could we go?" "I'll call Toshi. He got an apartment all to himself just recently, strangers would not know about it." Izuku's phone rang as they were walking back upstairs. It was Eijiro. "Hey Midobro." "I know," Izuku said. "He's stuck in ice now, but we need a new place for Shoto." "Shoto, didn't he go with his sister?" "He was supposed to. He's here. Can't stay now." "Oh. You can come here, I'll talk to them. I've been telling them about what's been happening with the Todorokis." "Okay, actually I think he might prefer that. We'll try to be there soon to not keep you up." "Don't worry, I'm just finishing my homework. My evening run took a little longer than usual." "Run?" Izuku looked at the time on his phone and shook his head. "Never mind. We'll be there." They changed and left the house to wait for the car some distance away. It took time to get to them with such a sudden need, and Izuku wasn't risking waiting at the house, not with Shoto fidgeting next to him, ready to freeze or burn his house down at the first strange sound. He stayed on the line with the police while they walked. The drive was quiet, and the driver dropped them. "Sorry about this. It was an emergency." "It's all right. I might not know everything you are doing, but I know enough." "Good." Izuku hesitated briefly. "Then you know this drive never happened and you have no idea where anyone lives?" The driver held two fingers against his forehead, then flicked them in greeting. Izuku joined Shoto outside and they headed to the nearby house. As they approached, Shoto's steps got faster and Izuku became the one following. At least the pavement behind Shoto wasn't freezing. That was good. The Kirishima house was not as fancy as where Izuku was staying, but still nice. Shoto rang the doorbell. The sound hadn't even disappeared when the door got yanked open. The night got a little brighter, and not just because the lights were on inside. "Hey, you made it?" Eijiro welcomed them and got out of the way to let them inside. "Thank you," Shoto mumbled. "Yeah man, anytime. Come on in. Our house isn't as big as Midobro's, but you can stay in the living room, we got sofa beds for guests." Shoto had barely gotten his shoes off before he was dragged further inside by the unbreakable shield turned unstoppable force that was an excited Eijiro. Izuku hung back, taking off his shoes more slowly. Partially it was just to watch the two walking to the next door with a soft smile on his face. Partially it was
Okay. Okay, back guys, I just had to, food. Hunger. Just continue.
Because of the two adults that had approached from another direction. Izuku was surprised at how different they appeared from Eijiro. For starters, neither of them had anything red on them. Both had hair as black as Tokoyama's feathers. The father was a totally normal-looking, slightly chubby man about the same height as his son, perhaps a little taller for now. It was hard to say with how Eijiro's hair usually stood up. Eijiro's mother was notably taller with a mutant-type quirk that made her skin rock-like, much like Eijiro's quirk when he was using it. On a superficial glance, Izuku estimated he was still the harder one of the two, which one would expect with the constant evolution of quirks. Both of them were giving Izuku a lot more than a superficial glance. "Hello," Izuku said, and after hesitating for a few seconds gave a polite bow. "I am Izuku Midoriya. We are sorry to disrupt you this late." He glanced at the next room where Eijiro was telling Shoto something while waving a hand around. "It was an emergency, and we needed a new safe space for Shoto. So you convinced our son we would hide him from his father," the man said. "Not exactly. I was planning to take him to another friend's home, but Eijiro offered help before I could even ask, even with the unwelcoming reception." Izuku smiled. "That's just how he is." "Are you trying to blame our son?" the man asked, but the woman raised her rocky arm. "Honey, I don't think he meant it like that. Can you really say he would need to do anything to convince Eijiro into helping someone?" "Yes, he would if it involves crime or villainy or danger." "Dad," Eijiro said with unusual seriousness. He was standing between the rooms with Shoto peeking out from behind him. "Really? You know that isn't true." "Well, maybe the danger part, but I'm trying to be a hero." "It is dangerous. It was always going to be, and a lot more dangerous than having friends overnight." "Son, can you be sure he?" Eijiro's father started pointing at Izuku. "Yes," Eijiro responded, verbally stabbing Izuku's heart in the process. The father's gaze moved to Shoto. "So they didn't kidnap you?" "No," Shoto responded meekly from behind Eijiro. "Please, don't let Endeavor know I'm here." "No worries," Eijiro said and snaked his arm around Shoto's. "No one but us knows you are here." Shoto relaxed a bit against Eijiro's support. They were all quiet for a moment until Eijiro's father sighed in surrender. It was a frustrated sigh, but a surrender nonetheless. "You can stay, tonight, but we will talk about this in the morning." "Great, thanks Dad, Mom. You coming Midobro?" "Yes, in just a moment." Eijiro looked at Izuku, then his parents, and nodded. He pushed the seriousness on his face away, his lips turning upwards before he spun around, dragging Shoto away with him again. "You know," Izuku said just quietly enough to be heard by only the parents, "despite everything, you must be some of the best parents I have met." "How so?" the father asked, still annoyed. His wife's smile revealed she already understood. "Because I don't know how else he would have happened," Izuku nodded after Eijiro and Shoto, then turned fully towards the parents. "You have issues with me. Whatever you have to say it now while they are busy. I doubt you'll come up with anything I wouldn't have already heard." There was a moment of silence. Then the mother spoke. "You can really take people's quirks." "Take, use, and give," Izuku corrected. "I'm sure you already saw the sports festival." "We saw you taking our son's quirk," the father said. "More like getting, on loan. I've been careful when even just asking to try people's quirk, but EI was almost excited for me to try it. After the festival he even offered our other friend to try it. It is a wonderful quirk by the way, even if he doesn't always want to believe it." "So, you admit it," the father said. Clearly, Izuku's eyes narrowed, and no, that does not mean I would steal it. If anything, I'd like to get him a second one. The two adults reacted pretty much as expected, mouths hanging open. You can do that? The father asked. You would do that? The mother asked at the same time. Yes, I already told you that. Izuku nodded and turned as if to follow the 1.5 redheads. Why? The mother asked. Even if you can do it, why our son? Izuku glanced back at them. Because the world is full of people with powerful quirks who don't deserve them. Because EI isn't one of them and would use one to save more people than most, maybe anyone else. Not that he needs a second or any quirk to help others. He pointed at Eijiro and Shoto who were opening sofa beds in the next room, Eijiro's smile having already infected the other. I hope you get my point. I already explained it to All Might and don't feel like repeating the whole thing. All Might, the mother said. You talked about our Eijiro to All Might. Yes. He wanted to know who I think in our class would be closest to kicking him off his pedestal, or at least would be the best for the job. Izuku took his backpack he had brought and left Eijiro's parents behind. Izuku leaned on the backrest of the sofa Shoto had sat on. You two doing fine? Yes. Shoto's response was interrupted by a long yawn. Heh, time to hit the bed, Eijiro said with as much energy as Izuku had had around noon, assuming the nightmares had been light the previous night. Hope you don't mind sharing the room. We've only got these sofas to sleep on. That's okay, Izuku smiled. With everything that has happened, Shoto has preferred to share a room anyway even when it was just the two of us. I can kind of understand it, empty rooms don't always feel right. Oh. Eijiro hummed. Hold on a sec. He hopped up from where he was sitting and disappeared out of the room, leaving only his parents to keep an eye on Izuku and Shoto from the entryway. Izuku tilted his head to let them know he hadn't forgotten them, but didn't say anything. Izuku and Shoto started settling down. A few moments later Eijiro appeared again, dragging big heavy-looking mattress over his head, smirking like he wasn't noticing the weight and put the mattress next to the sofas. We can have a full sleepover, and it's not even a weekend. Yeah, even if it feels a bit more awkward, Izuku glanced at Eijiro's parents again. Dad, Eijiro called, they are fine. You say so, but your safety is my responsibility. We don't know them. Looking at the two, and having both punched and been punched by one of them, the statement sounded mostly funny, but Izuku kept that to himself. Can you really trust him? Eijiro looked at his father and sighed, almost losing his smile. Suddenly he raised his hand closer to Izuku. I do. Izuku, take it. You mean? Yeah. Izuku took his hand and after a few seconds met Eijiro's father's stare. As you heard. He asked it, again. After the last word Izuku flexed his other arm and it hardened. Both parents gasped. Shoto and Eijiro barely blinked. Izuku then reversed the transfer and Eijiro did the same with his arm. See Dad, all good. Didn't even feel anything. The father shook his head. I can't understand it. You better have your quirk in the morning, or you will be grounded. He left the room. The mother smiled to Eijiro and turned to follow, though even she took another glance at Izuku. It could have gone worse. They started laying down. Izuku hadn't paid enough attention to figure out how, but Eijiro had gotten Shoto on his mattress between the sofas. Izuku approved. This was one case where the best place was between the rock and the hard place. Though Shoto was still a bit restless even after laying down. Hey Shoto, Izuku said. What do you think about EI's parents? I'm not sure. They seem to want the best, at least for him, but they didn't like you. I was a bit surprised. Oh, about what? Eijiro asked. About how they look. I could see your quirk comes from your mother, but other than that they don't look anything like you. Do you mean the hair? Izuku asked. Oh that, Eijiro said, brushing his hair with his fingers. Mine is actually colored. It is. Izuku asked, pushing himself up a little, trying to imagine Eijiro with any other color scheme. It just didn't fit. Black. Yeah, and my quirk didn't just come from my mom. Eijiro held up and hardened his arm. The hardening and strength come from her, but she has a mutant-type quirk. She can't stop using it. Dad has the transformation part so I can. He unhardened and hardened his arm a couple of times to demonstrate. Makes sense. Your quirk might seem like just one quirk, but it can only exist because of the combination of both of your parents' quirks. Still yours though, Izuku made the last addition for Shoto. They laid in silence for a moment after that. I hope we can train at Izuku's house again at some point, Shoto said. The new steel block is perfect for you. The words had an effect like a time machine as Eijiro suddenly seemed awake like it was 12 hours ago. Oh, it came. You really got one? I wasn't sure at first if you were joking. I wasn't, Izuku said, but if you break it on the first day, I'm not going to get a second one. I'll try my best. That's what I am worried about, especially after the robots at the sports festival. Hey, it was Todoroki who broke that. It just fell on me. Sorry, Shoto said. Eijiro fell quiet and put his hand on the other's shoulder. Hey, don't worry. No harm done. Because he got lucky on who it fell on, Izuku muttered before realizing to shut up. Maybe this isn't a good time. Eijiro started. No, Shoto muttered, silencing the redhead. I know. I cared more about winning to show Endeavor my strength than the safety of other people. I'm trying to do better, but often I still just think what is good for me, mostly how to avoid Endeavor even if it means taking advantage of you. Izuku stared at him for a moment. Should I slap him or do you want to? The two reacted at the same time. He is still thinking he should be worried to ask for help. Oh, Eijiro realized and tapped Shoto's head. Is that good enough? Izuku huffed but smiled. He laid back down fully. I know you say I shouldn't worry about it, but if I'm supposed to care more about other people, where does having others endure something for me become not good? Izuku thought for a moment. I don't think there is a simple answer on that. If you really want to focus on helping others but are uncertain, you could always ask what would Eijiro do, as long as it doesn't involve blocking attacks with your face. The redhead tilted upon hearing that. Shoto hummed a bit, uncertain. That sounds good, but, why not what would Izuku do? I wouldn't recommend that, Izuku said every word quieter than the previous.
If you most likely, what would you do? Most likely you do a lot more to hurt the person like hell, torture them probably a little bit, even kill them. Nah, that's not, his money is not a lot dangerous more.
Try to sleep now. Once they stopped talking, Eijiro fell asleep first in no time at all. Izuku was so jealous wishing he had that ability. Then Shoto's breathing slowed some time later. Izuku remained awake, staring at the dark ceiling and listening to the calming sound of the two breaths next to him. They reminded him that Izuku Midoriya was perhaps more than a walking lie to give the world an innocent-ish face. Unfortunately, that face didn't feel like sleeping now. Well, he did, even yawned, trying not to make a sound, but that didn't mean he would fall asleep. It was a very unpleasant combination and Izuku started wishing he had already gotten that sleep-deprived quirk. Eventually he stood up and went to the nearest window to peek out between the curtains. They might have come here to be safe, but this place didn't have the same kind of security as his house. There were no signs of movement and no sounds. Well, not outside. Izuku turned to meet the eyes of Eijiro's father at the entryway to the room. He still wasn't trusting enough to have Eijiro sleep with friends in the same room. Izuku held his finger up in front of his mouth, nodding at the two sleeping forms before moving to another window. He walked past the father on his way back to bed. "Your son still has his quirk," Izuku whispered. "We both prefer things that way." "Why would I believe that?" "Because him being unbreakable means I have a little less to worry about," Izuku said, looking at the two. "I don't have much, and those few there are that I do have chosen dangerous paths in life." He laid back down on the bed, checking news and social media for anything about him or Shoto with the sheet to block the light. Eventually he put the phone down, a little more confident no one was about to jump them. That was until an irritating ringing filled the air around him. Eyes still closed, Izuku's hand sought for the source from its usual place on the bedside table, but it was not there, the table wasn't there and the sound was further away. It disappeared on its own. "Good morning." The words loudly penetrated the darkness around Izuku, which was then filled by light. Izuku forced his eyelids open despite them not wanting to move. Eijiro was pulling open curtains, allowing early morning light inside. Had Izuku missed the alarm? He realized he hadn't even delayed the usual early alarm he had for morning workout. It only started ringing as Izuku was reaching for his phone. Apparently Eijiro had almost the same wake-up time. He just had more energy after sleeping properly. Shoto held his right hand on his face and some white frost formed between his fingers. He shuddered visibly, but his eyes opened wider and more awake. "That's one way to wake up," Izuku chuckled. Shoto jolted and his hand dropped fast as his head turned to notice Izuku. "Morning," Izuku said, keeping his voice low and soft. Shoto calmed and smiled back. "Morning. Did you get sleep?" "Yes, slower than you, let alone EI, but at least I didn't wake up in the middle of the night." "No nightmares?" "No. I heard you having them." Izuku looked at Shoto for a moment but gave up and chose honestly for once. He shook his head. "Yeah, not bad enough to wake up, but I had them." He yawned. "Sorry if it woke you up." "I didn't do anything worse, right?" Izuku glanced around the sofa bed. Shoto tilted his head. "Don't worry about it. I would have put the fire out if it was that bad." Izuku grimaced as he got up to sit. He froze at the sound of steps behind him. "And what fire are we talking about?" Good morning, Dad," Eijiro said. "We were just getting ready for our morning workout." "What?" His father emphasized each word. "Fire." Well." Eijiro struggled to come up with something to say. "It really isn't anything important." "Eijiro." "It is something that happened to me," Izuku said quickly but quietly. He hesitated for a long moment after that, but it shouldn't be Eijiro's burden to explain away his problems. "I once had a nightmare bad enough that, when I got suddenly woken up, I lit a fire with a quirk I have. I was lucky Shoto was in the room. I guess it is good I didn't disrupt your sleep then." Izuku raised his head and turned towards the man for the first time since sunrise. "I heard you talking in your sleep," the man said even more seriously. "It was like you were fighting, and angry. Then you stopped and started crying, thanking EI for something." Izuku said nothing. The over-energetic redhead moved closer. His mother showed up from behind his father. At least she was smiling. "Midoriya was it," the father said, still serious. "I still feel I should be suspicious of you, but seems, if you want something from our son, it is not his quirk, probably. As much as we worry, we agreed to support him if he got into a hero school, so." He fell quiet and turned his head away. Eijiro's mother stepped forward. "He isn't good at admitting he might have been wrong. Basically, we aren't going to get in the way if Eijiro wants to help someone, or two someones. We talked about it, and we won't mind if Todoroki stays here, at least as long as it isn't clearly illegal. Also, he must stay inside while he is here, if people really are so interested in where he is." "That's great, thanks Mom, Dad," Eijiro declared. His father soon left for work and his mother disappeared somewhere. Izuku sat on the sofa thinking about what had just happened. Eijiro sat next to him and the relative dullness of his smile revealed he was onto serious business. So, he paused, about that nightmare. I don't remember any details, Izuku sighed, but it sounds I might have you to thank for that. Yeah, I still don't quite understand. Do you remember the different types of nightmares I've had? Yeah, was this the second kind? Eijiro forced a smirk and pointed a thumb at his chest. Figured Red Riot won't go down even in nightmares, right? I don't think so. What your father said, about me fighting and angry and crying. I think this was the third kind of nightmare. I guess you are already keeping your promises. What promises? Shoto asked, just putting on his PE uniform shirt behind him. Izuku pressed his lips together as Eijiro jolted to look back at Shoto. He still had work to do in remaining alert and aware of his surroundings. Oh, well, I don't think I can say. It was something Izuku felt was important because of some nightmares. The third kind, wasn't that the one about him almost killing people? Oh, you know. He was listening outside the room back then. You didn't notice? Izuku asked. Oh, right. Haven't thought about that. Somehow even in that situation he got Izuku to smile a bit. Izuku put his hand on Eijiro's shoulder, using it as support as he stood up. Thank you, and sorry if I woke up you too. Ah, don't worry, Eijiro said and brushed his hair as he stood up, I never even noticed. I can be a bit of a heavy sleeper. He looked at Izuku in silence for a moment. Can we do something? Izuku shook his head. Already did, he smirked. Maybe I should talk about it with Dr. Shinso. I think he still owes me a few therapy sessions for helping with his training. That might be good, Shoto agreed. So, Izuku said. Did I hear someone talking about a morning workout? The room experienced a second sunrise as the words reached Eijiro. He led them into a large garage with a small space spared for the car with the opposite wall filled by long racks of weights that must have weighed more combined than the car. Eijiro's mother was already doing deadlifts there with weights that looked like they weighed more than the three teenagers combined. She smirked. I was starting to wonder if you were going to skip this morning. No way. Eijiro shouted, holding his fist up as his arm hardened. He went to grab at least as many weights as his mother had. Someday I'll beat you, without using my quirk even. Maybe when I turn 70. You should have started training earlier. She reached for some more weights herself. Well, this explains a lot, I think, Izuku muttered. Favorite, story author follow, story author.
That? Let me see something else though. Okay, let's see how long has been. Okay, we got enough right here. The next few parts mostly.